Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar at the first Football Tableau user group. This is Tactics, Training and Tableau, how data can affect decision making. First of all, we'll start with why. So why is data and Tableau important in a professional football environment? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. It's to help win football matches. So everything that I'm going to show here today is sort of a genuine use case. It's something that we use day to day at the club, and everything has the end goal, which is to win football matches. Okay, so to kick off, we'll just start quickly with a little bit about me. So I studied sports science at Liverpool John Moores University. Following on from that, I then went to work for Prozone, who are now sort of Stats Perform, who have merged with Opta. Working for Prozone, I worked in both the UK and also in the US, working with teams ranging from college level in the US all the way up to the US women's national team and the US men's national team, providing support for them. Following on from that, I then worked for Rewards for Racing, which might be a bit of an unusual sort of job to throw in there, especially when this is a football user group. But it was at Rewards for Racing where I actually first started to use Tableau, introduced me to Tableau, and I sort of learned on the job there. So it was a really important job for me. Following on from that, I then went to Forest Green Rovers in League Two. They were the smallest football team in the Football League at that time. However, they'd actually been using Tableau the season before as well in the conference. So a really forward-thinking team there. I then got brought into Derby to sort of be the first data analyst or first technical analyst there and introduce the club to data and to Tableau. And I've now this season moved to Swansea, and I'm doing the same thing there. So trying to help set up a data culture at the club for the coaching staff and for the players from first team level, hopefully down to the academy as well. Okay, so as I've just mentioned, really, my last 4 roles have all used Tableau on a daily basis, and they've been as an insight analyst, a data analyst, and a technical analyst. So really, as I mentioned, my background is not really in sort of data or mathematics. I've learnt Tableau as I've worked, and my main job really, and something I pride myself on at work, is sort of bringing insights and turning sort of large data sets into meaningful insights and insights that the coaching staff and the players can understand, and Tableau plays a huge part in making that happen. So at Swansea City, our sort of analysis philosophy, if you like, is based on 3 Ps, which are people, products and processes. So we'll go through them now one by one with a little more information. So obviously having the right people is key. We have Steve Rands, who's our head of analysis. You've then got Tom Jenkinson, who's our tactical analyst at first team level. Myself, who's a technical analyst at first team. And then we've got Dan Morris, who's sort of our data architect, data scientist. Then in the academy, we have Hannah Bergen, Adam Mahoney, Johnny Williams and Lewis Mahoney. And then on the sort of semicircle there, to the right, we've got David Tivy and Dan Nisbet. Now, they're our physical performance department. The reason I put them on there is we're really closely linked with them, especially at first team level. We share an office, the 6 of us at the top there. And I don't know if you can quite tell, but there's 3 names there that are slightly greyed out, which is myself and the 2 Dans, Dan Morris and Dan Nisbet. All 3 of us now use Tableau on a daily basis at work. When I came to the club, nobody was using Tableau, but now we've got 3 people using it on a day-to-day basis, which is brilliant. So we move on to products now, and we pride ourselves at Swansea on having best-in-class products, and by having that, we can deliver a world-class service to the coaching staff. So at the top there, we've got our primary data sources. So we've got Opta, who are our primary technical data source, and Catapult, who are our primary physical data source. Companies that I'm sure most people watching this will be very familiar with. We're also one of the first teams who are utilising the Goodall physical data. So the orange logo there on the left is Goodall. We're utilising the Goodall physical data on match days. We've then got SBG and Sports Code, who are our tools to code games live and conduct opposition analysis and post-match analysis. So they're the market leaders there. Again, I'm sure most of you are familiar with those brands. And then at the bottom are our sort of reporting tools, let's say. So the bottom left logo, Ross, that actually represents a company called Piero, who are a telestration software. For those of you that aren't aware, telestration is essentially sort of drawings on a video clip. So what you see on Monday Night Football and Match of the Day, every clip that our players see will always be Piero'd, as we call it. So every clip will be telestrated with relevant information to help the players understand the message. And then, of course, bottom right there, we've got Tableau. So all of the data that our players and our coaching staff will see will all have been ran through Tableau. Okay, so we now move to processes. So this is sort of a brief overview of our analysis cycle, shall we say. So again, most clubs will be working to this model, I would think. So step one is to create a game plan. So we'll look at our next opponent. We'll use qualitative and quantitative data and analysis to create a game plan on our upcoming opponent. Step two, we'll sort of create the package, create the report across various delivery mechanisms. So we'll capture video out of SBG and Sports Code. We'll capture data, obviously the Opta data will be analysed in Tableau, and then we'll put it together in an iBook. So we sort of PDF tableaus and we can send them across directly, Tableau dashboard should I say. We can send them across directly to players and to coaches. We'll then also take screen grabs of specific pieces which are important for the game plan. They will then get dropped into the iBook along with relevant video clips which back up the data, and they will then be available to the players and the coaches right up until kickoff. Step three, obviously the coaches will then go and deliver the game plan to the players on the training pitch. So we want to train the way we play. And then following on from that, we obviously want to play the way we train. So it's up to the players then to go out and deliver on the pitch. And as I'm sure most of you are familiar with, this cycle starts again very quickly, within a matter of days, or realistically probably the following day when you start the cycle again for your next opponent. But before that starts, there'll always be time to review and analyse the previous game. And again, Tableau plays a huge part in this, and we'll get onto that later. So it's the processes that we want to talk about more in this talk today, and it's how Tableau helps with these processes, ranging from pre-match to post-match. So naturally, we'll start with pre-match and opposition reporting. So there's some really sort of basic Tableau dashboards and examples which we can go through, but they all provide us with key information for each game. So this first one here that we're looking at is player demographics. So it's quite a simple bar chart. If we just zoom in a little bit, down the left-hand side, we can see that the players are split into their positions. On there, we've got squad number, player name, player age, and player height. Again, all useful information, which I'm sure every analyst watching this, will have to pick that information up, but we can get it really quickly from this view. And then along with that on the bars, we've got minutes played, total appearances, total starts, and subs on and off. Now, really quickly, this can give us an indication of which players we think are likely to play of our opponent, which players are potentially likely to be brought on off the bench, and which players are maybe likely to be subbed off as well. So again, really nice and simple, but gives you a lot of information, which I'm sure most analysts and most coaches look for, but we can get it all really nicely in one Tableau dashboard. The next piece is formation analysis. So Tableau is great for this, really. And the main reason is that we can understand what formations our opponent has played and what formations our opponent has faced as well. By doing this, we can then look to discover what players are likely to feature in these formations and in each position, what time of substitutes made, and who is likely to be used, again, which links to the previous dashboard, and what formation have they struggled against. So just at the bottom of the screen here as well, you can see we can plot formations. So this is plotted for every match across Europe automatically. So we'll have a filter. We can select any game we like and we'll see the formation plotted on there with the relevant players. Now this takes us on to our first case study. So as I've said, we're going to show some real life examples here of how Tableau is helping win football matches, and this is a really good example. So last season, the scenario is the playoff semi-final second leg at Ellen Road. Obviously I was at Derby County at the time. We went there behind from the first leg at home. Nobody had ever overturned a home deficit, essentially. So we had a chance to make history. There's a scenario there. So no team had ever won a semi-final after being behind from the first leg at home. We knew we had to do something a little bit different. We'd played Leeds 3 times at this point and we'd lost all 3. So we knew we had to change it up. Now, this is dummy data, but this has given us a real life example of how Tableau can play a huge part pre-match. So the 2 charts we're looking at here is formations played by a team and formations faced by a team. Now, as I mentioned, this isn't Leeds last season. This is just giving you an example of the workflow that we sort of did. So at the top, we can see there that this team most frequently play a 4-2-3-1 based on the length of the bar. But then in the circle, you can actually see how many points per game they win when they play that formation. So this team are actually more effective when playing a 4-3-3, even though they've only played it on a couple of occasions. However, what we were interested in is the formations that they'd faced. So this team that we're looking at here has faced a 4-2-3-1 a number of times as well, and they've averaged 1.5 points per game. However, when they play against a 4-4-2, they average less than a point a game. So potentially, some teams looking at this that can adapt and play a 4-4-2, it might be worth playing against this specific team. Now, what we did when we looked at Leeds, we noticed that they'd never faced a 4-1-2-1-2, which is a diamond. So you can see that second bottom on this chart here at the bottom. So we knew that Leeds hadn't faced a diamond. We then went away and did a further bit of research, and we noticed that in a number of years, I think pretty much as far back as we looked, Bielsa hadn't faced a diamond. Therefore, that was a tactic that we wanted to try and implement. How do we go about doing that? Well, I'll play this video and talk you through it. Again, really simple worksheet in Tableau. We have every team here in Europe. Looking at what formation they use, so you can select whichever formation you're interested in. So a 4-1-4-1. It happens to be Leeds that are top of this, so they've played that a number of times. A 4-2-3-1. Preston have played that a number of times. What we did, again, this is dummy data. We looked at teams that had played a diamond. I think towards the top of the list last season, we saw teams like Tottenham and Manchester United. We then went and got a couple of Tottenham and Manchester United wide-angle games. Using SBG, we created an XML really quickly, and we could analyse how Tottenham and Manchester United and various other top teams had implemented a diamond. We then took that to the coaches, who then took that out onto the training pitch, and we worked on it, which is here. So from Tableau and SBG and Sports Code, we've created a game plan, which ultimately went on to create a piece of history. Okay, so back to pre-match, and we can also look at playing styles. So here are more real-life dashboards and examples for you again. So these bars represent how long teams spend in each zone. So on the left, it's the defensive third, then the middle third, and then obviously on the right, it's the attacking third. So how long do teams spend in each of these zones? Now, we played West Brom recently. It's actually not that recently now, but it was one of our last games. And when we'd watched the video, we thought that they'd gone a lot more direct and they weren't playing out from the back as much. Quickly, by going onto this dashboard, we can select West Brom, which we've done on the video that's played through. These games are obviously ranked in date order. So if you look at these bottom sort of 7 or 8 games, you can see that on the build the attack phase, so the defensive third, they're spending a lot more time in that area. So the data is backing up what we've seen with our eyes. Next, we have this, which is called the Swan's Nest. basically what this is, it's almost like a who scored or a transfer market, really basic metrics. But what we can do here is we can look at a team that we're about to play and we can see where they rank for a number of important metrics. Now this is just one page. We've got a number of pages with different metrics on here. We can look for, we can look against, so how many shots obviously do the certain team have, how many shots do they face. We can look at home and away. There might be subtle differences when a team plays at home versus away. We can also look at a date range as well. So if a new manager comes in, we can select the date filter you see at the top there between two different dates, and we can see how a team is performing just in that time period since a new manager's come in, or whatever the time period is that we might want to look at. And then finally, these are really common sort of the scatter plots you see a lot. This is a simple version here that we've added in on playing styles. So here you can sort of see which teams are more direct and then which teams like to pass the ball more and play more football. Tableau, as I mentioned earlier, is also affecting behaviours for sports science and for the medical departments at Swansea. So this is a little piece here on physical performance, on monitoring player load. Every player has a physical profile now which we can access on Tableau online via the iPad. The players will see this, the coaches will see this, and it's having a huge impact on us. So here, this is showing how training compared to a match day. So every number here is actually a percentage, and it's the percentage that this training session related to an average match day. So if we look at the red bars, see the 25 there. So for this player, for that specific metric, obviously we blanked them out, for obvious reasons. But for that red metric, this player hit 25% of his match day output for that metric. This is acute chronic ratio, so load management. So using this chart, we can see do players need to work more or work less intense during these training sessions. Maybe they need to do extras depending on where they fall on this chart. Again, a lot of this is dummy data here, just to give you an example. And then here we have weekly and daily training reports as well. So key metrics are getting tracked across days and across weeks, so we can see how things compare to the average. Now we move to live and tracking KPIs during match days. So this really is very much a work in progress for us. So we're looking to measure specific game plan metrics as the game goes on using Tableau. But a way this could be vastly improved is by using tracking data. I know at the minute there's sort of a big push on tracking data in football. There's lots of sort of resources out there on the internet. There's a Premier League wide sort of like a league-wide deal where they all get tracking data. Sadly, that's not in the Championship yet, but we're hoping that will come in, and when it does, that'll be of huge benefit to us. I've just sort of tagged in Eva Murray here, who's obviously one of the leaders on this football Tableau user group. I know Eva's done some really great work with tracking data in Tableau. And then also live physical data. So can we access our GPS data or the huddle data, which I briefly mentioned earlier? Can we access that live during a game and relay messages down to the coaching staff almost instantly, really? So one example of what we do is something like this, really simple. So throughout the game, this will populate as the game progresses and the Opta data hits our database. These numbers will change live. So just simple metrics, really. As I've mentioned previously, we'd like to get this more in depth and more relevant to the specific game plan. But the coaching staff have access to this. If there's anything specific that pops out to us up on the press bench when we're at the game, we can sort of relay it down via radio to the coaching staff. And then also at half time, they'll have access to this in the manager's office. We then move to post-match. So post-match, we're looking to measure performance against our playing philosophy, but also the game plan for that specific game as well. So Tableau plays a huge part in this. So first we have our traffic light reporting. So pretty straightforward, really. Red, amber and green. I'm just going to whiz through this. So in each of these games, how have we performed compared to our average? Again, here, it's the same thing. A number of key metrics, just a different way of seeing it. Are we having more or less shots in this specific game than our average? And then again, benchmarking across a full season. So it might be that in games we win, we see a lot of green, hopefully. But obviously, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, That never seems to be the case. Sometimes you win a game and sort of data-wise you do everything right, but that's just the way it goes. So KPIs, obviously key performance indicators. So did we execute our game plan? Now, all of this that we're about to see will be available to the coaches within an hour, straight after the game. Realistically, I think we can probably turn this around in maybe 30 minutes. So by the time, the coaches have finished doing what they need to do, media obligations, etc., they can come in and they'll have all this information ready to go. So again, key metrics there, similar to what we've just seen with the live reporting. Obviously, we'll collate that for the full game, and that will be available in the report. Another one, which is a nice sort of virtual one, or like an animated one that we can see in Tableau Online. I'll just play this through. This is a passing matrix where on the left you can see passing relationships. If you then click on that relationship, you can actually see the passes on the pitch as well. So this is interesting. Again, if there's a specific game plan, sort of game plan aspect that you want to look at immediately post-match, you can. And actually what we're looking at here, which is Freddie Woodman, our goalkeeper, playing a third line pass into Wayne Routledge. This was actually something that we spoke about heavily in our opposition analysis pre-game. So here it was nice to see a couple of examples of where this particular sort of move came off. Also, very, very simple shot map, this one here. There's lots of other things you can do with the shot map. An XG timeline, and then just shots coloured based on expected goals. You can change the shape based on if it was a foot shot, a head shot, a shot from a set piece, a free kick or a penalty. All coaches have access on iPads and Macs to Tableau Online, where they can go in and filter this themselves and hover over things, and different things will happen on the dashboards. But then us as the analyst will also build a written report, which will include Tableau visualizations linked to relevant video and game plan moments. So for example, we might find something in Tableau like these shots. Let's say, for example, we'll put in a little thumbprint where the coach can click on that and it would take you to the relevant shots or whatever that particular page and that particular piece of data is referring to. We then move on to individual analysis. So every player will have an individual analysis as well. So they'll get this sent out to them, showing their matchday KPIs and then how they compared in this particular game to their season average, which you can see there. Now, different metrics are used for each position as per our player profiling model. So obviously, what a fullback will see on their report will be different to what a striker will see on their report, obviously. Okay. So how did we go about defining which metrics to use for which player? Well, we used the Opta data. We worked out which events had been most often coded alongside each position. We then asked our coaching staff to essentially rank them. Really simple, rank these metrics from 1 to 10 on how important you think they are for each position. And we then came up with sort of a really simple ranking of which are the most important metrics. So these metrics here, whichever position this is we're looking at, they're the metrics that you'll see on that position's individual reporting in Tableau. This was made in Excel, by the way, before I joined the club, so don't hold that one against me. And this actually takes us on to our second case study. So this is about George Byers, who's a midfielder that plays for us. And he had a meeting with an analyst and a coach, and the emphasis on the meeting was playing forward. So this was a piece of individual development. We have an individual meeting room at Swansea, a nice area where players can go, and it's quite informal. You can just say what you think, and there's a big screen in there, and we can show data, we can show video, and this is exactly what we did with George. So if I'll play this through for you, and you'll be able to see. Okay, so first things first, we looked at Swansea City as a team. So are we playing forward? At the point in time when we did this meeting, we obviously ranked quite high for number of passes, number of forward passes, number of passes into attacking areas. This is then where George ranks compared to other midfielders in the league and across Europe. There you go, that's championship specific. And then we asked George the question of where you should be. So before this sort of circle showed up, which we can now see, we would have asked George to point on the board where he thought he would be. So this is looking at successful forward passes and also receiving in the attacking third. So where do you think he would be? Then we highlighted exactly where he is, before going on to highlight other players in the championship in his position, who, based on the data, are producing these metrics slightly more than he is. So sort of an aim there for him to get into that category with those players. And then you can see the elite level players as well. So what he needs to do to get to their level. So a piece of individual analysis there using Tableau, which the player would have seen. Obviously what we can then do using that scatter plot is we can track that over time. And 5 to 10 games down the line, we could say to George, look, this is where you were initially and this is where you are now. Obviously, unfortunately, George got injured after that, so we haven't been able to do that piece of work, which would be nice to see. But hopefully we'll be back. He'll be back soon, and we'll be back playing soon as well. Again, post-match physical performance is reported using Tableau. So Dan Nisbet, as mentioned, does a lot of this work. So we'll utilise both Catapult and Huddle data to analyse physical output, both for and against. So we can actually look at our opponent's physical output as well and compare that to ours. So again here, looking at dummy data, this is a dummy game between ourselves and QPR. We can look at each player's physical output. So this one is total distance. We also have a dashboard for high intensity distance and sprint distance as well. So these are all filters available on a dashboard. We also then can pick a specific player and measure their physical performance compared to previous matches. So you can see there's a reference line there for total distance and for high intensity distance, and we can clearly see if in each of these games did the player hit their average, did they beat it, were they below it. This is really useful for when obviously we have sort of double game weeks and Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, seeing which players can consistently hit good numbers and which players potentially drop off in those double game weeks. So there's a real quick overview of the processes, sort of day to day at Swansea, and how Tableau is used heavily. We've shown you some real life examples here, albeit using dummy data, but you can see, just at this sort of picture here of the number of different Tableau dashboards that go into all of these processes. Okay, so set pieces, obviously a huge part of football, as you'll all be well aware. And in this piece, really, I want to look at set pieces and how Tableau can help us find marginal gains. So just to set the scene, really, there are 20 set pieces per game on average in the Championship. And last season, Swansea conceded 24 goals from set pieces, which, from the data that we have, we believe that was the most in Europe last season, which is obviously not great. Now, this is a quick table, a quick sort of chart that we've put together, looking at set pieces scored minus set pieces conceded this season in the Championship. So, for example, if you've scored 20 and you've conceded 10, obviously your rank on here will be 10, pretty straightforward. So here you can see how teams rank. So the top team is +6 and the bottom team is -12. And what's really interesting here is the 10 teams there that have sort of a plus set piece goal difference, shall we call it. 7 of those 10 teams are in the race for promotion and sort of in the race for promotion. I don't mean they're sort of 14th, 15th and they can get in. I mean they're right in the mix. So it just goes to show how important set pieces are in the Championship, and I think in football as a whole as well. So if there are any Championship analysts or coaches watching this, it'd be interesting to have a look at this chart and sort of see where you think your team might sit on this chart, or you may well know, but you can now compare that to other teams as well really quickly. A little note on there, Swansea are 16 goals better off than they were at this time last season. So hopefully we're doing something right. And that takes us on to case study 3. which is of course set pieces and using Tableau to find weaknesses. So here we were about to play Hull, and we were looking at where Hull City win first contacts. So the data is adjusted, as you can see, so all corners are taken from the right hand side as we look, and the heat chart, the heat graph sort of shows where Hull win first contacts when they're defending their own box from a corner. So if you sort of aim towards the penalty spot, you can see the sort of the orangey red colour there. They're pretty strong at defending around the penalty spot. The near post, if you try and deliver to the near post, they're pretty good at defending that. However, they give up this space at the front post. So sort of a pass into the box, into that front post area is available. So we've used Tableau, we've noticed that, and we can now see what happened when we went and played Hull. So we have a corner. You can see the way they set up, zonal, they're marking on the penalty spot, so everything we've highlighted makes sense. However, if you can see our player Kyle Norton, number 26, he's in that vacated space. And there you go. Now, of course, that doesn't happen in every game, but hopefully that's a really good example of how Tableau can help you win football matches. Now, we didn't win this particular game, but you understand what I mean. You know, the marginal gains and the things there that you can spot instantly. You know, we can filter that from Hull to any team, and straight away we get a really good insight into how they defend corners. So that's the third of the 3 case studies that I'm delivering today. So again, hopefully you've seen Tableau in action, really. Real life examples. All 3 of these things happened. You know, they aren't made up. They all had an impact, especially number 1 and obviously number 3 as well. So then finally, you know, we'll wrap this up. So turning big data into meaningful insights. How does Tableau help? Well, there's 3 key things that I've put down here. So the first one is being control. So some dashboards that we create are for analysts only. So we use permissions on Tableau Online to choose who sees what. So for example, there'll be some things that maybe even myself and Dan, data architect, can see that maybe even Tom, our tactical analyst, won't see. There'll then be some dashboards that sports science can see, that medical can't see, and vice versa. And obviously what we sort of allow the coaches to see will also differ as well. Now, simplicity is the next one. So sometimes calculated fields, set actions and parameters aren't required. Obviously those of you that are familiar with Tableau will know what they are, but quite a few of these examples I've showed in this talk, it's been really quite straightforward, sort of, you know, bar charts, scatter graphs, but they've delivered clear and concise messages, which is exactly what you need to do. And as I mentioned right at the start of this speech, sort of my main role really is just delivering those concise messages from big data, you know. And then finally, flexibility, which I suppose really is, it sort of works alongside control. So filters, tooltips and actions within Tableau can allow the user, which is often coaches, to find the insight themselves. So our coaches have basically been taught or have been educated, shall we say, on how to use Tableau. And sometimes now they can go onto dashboards themselves and they can look for specific players or specific teams themselves without having to come to us. They can hover over, you know, bar charts and see a tooltip, which will help them hopefully get a better understanding of what they're looking at. So hopefully all 3 of those things sort of work together, and it gives you a real clear indication of how Tableau can help in a professional environment, and it's definitely helped us. So there we are. Thanks for listening. This has been Tactics, Training and Tableau. Obviously, I'm Tom Goodall. If you want to get in touch with me, you're more than welcome to. My email's on there. I hope you've enjoyed it. And yeah, if you have any questions or, you know, anything you want to talk to me about, feel free to drop me an email or grab me on LinkedIn.